Every 6 says.
Yeah, I'll mark that in minutes.
Commissioner Krajewski signed the gavel to touch hard.
Not necessary.
Not necessary. All right, okay. So, no public comments, we'll move through that. If you could take a minute to review the meeting minutes from January 11th, the notes have been, I think, made to make the changes that Commissioner Martin had pointed out.
I mean, she still says in person.
No, I have an updated version.
Oh, I know, okay.
Yeah. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 11th with the changes noted.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion passes.
Who was second?
Liz.
I just heard a second.
Okay. So,
Do you want table number 4?
yeah, we have to table number 4. Since Bill's not here. What I can share with you, and I'm sure maybe Josh, you're aware of that, but they just had a meeting, or they're going to have a meeting this upcoming Monday to finalize the wayfinding signs plan. So it seems as though they've made some progress on that. But I just saw the emails going to get exchanged back. I was expecting there to be. And I still kept 5 on there.
Yeah, what are the next sections?
So, I mean, since we don't have beautification committee and you don't, you can tell I'm in the end here, so it's fine. This is really, it should be economic development is what you should be talking about. So, Josh has already participated. All right, so what we're gonna talk about now is the economic development strategy. At the end of the last meeting, I think thanks in large part to the survey that David put out, we have the priority, which I sent it out late. I meant to send it out with the agenda on Monday, but I sent it out today with the items on the economic development strategy that we prioritized through our vote. And we had talked about at the end of the last meeting in January that the next phase in the charting course was to assign perhaps stakeholders that we think that we should, again, we're just making this plan that we can present to the village board and ultimately their responsibility to kind of follow through on this. But so additional stakeholders in the community that we think that we can enlist to help with the support of the development of that economic strategy. And so where we had left off the last meeting was we were going to identify those different stakeholders, and then put together a proposal that this was the last step in the economic development strategy. And then I was going to go with Aaron and present it to the village board for their. So that's really the last step that we have to do tonight is to analyze those items. And I think that we agreed on, it wasn't in the middle, but I thought we agreed on doing, it was like the top. We're going to keep them all on there, but we're going to focus on the top 5 if I remember. Is that, Dave, is that seems right?
I think so.
5 or 6.
5 or 6. There was like a definite break in the points.
Yes.
From where like
Yeah,
they were
After that.
a lot of alignment and
Substantial,
then
yeah.
it kind of dropped.
Yeah. So I think tonight, what we'd like to do is just kind of take those, just really those items before the break, before we had the drop off, let's assign some stakeholders. And then let's talk about, exactly what we plan on presenting to the village board. And then I'll organize with you, Aaron, as to what the most appropriate board meeting that we will do that at,
Okay.
which obviously will be between now and the next meeting. So it would be.
I would not do it at the next board meeting. That'll be at Hampshire Middle School.
Oh, okay.
Because we have a couple of
oh, yeah. The zoning.
annexation and zoning public hearings. So that meeting's gonna be probably pretty packed to have it in there. I would probably recommend that we wait till the
May?
first meeting of April, right? That would be the next one?
That would be the next one. And I mean, you can do it then if that's when you want to do it. That's just also gonna be the night of the budget presentation of the board.
Oh, yeah, so maybe middle of April?
We could do that. We could do that. So we're looking at, it's what, first and third Thursday, right?
20th.
The 20th of April. Okay. That works for me.
Yeah, that works.
Still 7 o'clock?
Yes,
Meeting.
good call on the budget one, because that would be a long meeting.
I thought that's what you were gonna say, that it was gonna be the budget.
No,
I
we've
don't
got,
want to be in that meeting.
I don't want to be in the zoning meeting, that's like,
we just, it's not that I mean, you've been there before. There could be a lot of public comment that we allow time for.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could go first, it'd be nice to. No, I don't want to sit down.
I think the public hearings would go first.
Yes, that's true, they do, they do go first, right, of course, so, okay, so I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna put that in my schedule, so go ahead. So, all right, so that's what we're gonna do. So if we go ahead and take a look at the, items on that, Josh, do you have,
I don't think so.
I emailed
But
it,
if you send it to me, I can.
I did, if you could pull that up, maybe put it up on there, so.
Yep.
we can see. And then let's talk about, just talk through that and just make sure we feel comfortable, and then we can talk about how we want to frame, the presentation to the board. Just nail that down, and I think we call that.
When you were talking about stakeholders for the 6 things, are you thinking like each of us would take one and kind of expand on it a little bit for the presentation? Or are you thinking outside the Economic Development Committee, we would connect with
Yeah.
people and see what their feedback is, or what are your thoughts?
So originally, when we talked about this, obviously we're open to, different ideas, but, the idea was we're gonna develop this plan, right? This economic development strategy, these core goals and objectives that we want to accomplish. And then, but a lot of those things are going to require collaboration and cooperation with other stakeholders that exist outside of the village, like perhaps a park district, perhaps, township, or maybe the fire district, or other entities, and we just want to name them and just share that information such that these might, in addition to the village board and village staff, that there may be other stakeholders in the community that can help us in achieving those goals.
So not a task for them, but
Yes,
just an
no.
identification of when we go to the village board, here are
Yes.
stakeholders to consider for each of these.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And then, then it would be sort of upon the village board, Jay, or the, either village board in conjunction with village staff to sort of execute whatever that
Yeah,
plan is. So,
coordinate the.
Yeah, I mean,
collaboration.
and yeah, at
Okay.
the end of the day, this is just a guiding document to guide, Josh and Jay and the rest of the team's sort of decision-making process and understanding, what at least we think, and then obviously passing it through the village board, see what they think. But, it did seem likely that we wouldn't be able to, there might need some cooperation with some other stakeholders in the community. So it's really a low stake kind of thing at this point, just identifying, hey, we think you might want to coordinate with this group. So, fine. I could email it.
I was gonna say-
I sent it like 4 o'clock.
I don't have anything from you since February.
Really? I meant to send this one tonight. And, oh, Josh, terrible. I did not include you. Yeah. All right. That's on me. I'm sending it to you. And this was basically just the result of what Dave's survey had pulled together. So we've got, just kind of start throwing out development comprehensive plan. Continue to expand infrastructure was before the drop off. Facade program. Keep white website current. Analyze opportunities for state and federal funding. And I think we went down to what, 10.0? Put up here, second, code enforcement, keep incentives in the budget.
Yeah, there was you had stack ranked all of it together.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on where we decide that cutoff is. So like, it looks like there's a drop off after item number 6, you go from 11.2 to 10.5 and 10. This is a cumulative results, and we go from 10.5 to 10, then to 9.7. So I don't think it's really critical.
Do we cut it like For some reason, I'm feeling like we talked about cutting at 10.
And I thought 10
That's
was
what
the
I
number.
thought too,
right?
yeah.
Right, but now it's, yeah, I know there was debate on 5 and 10, and it doesn't matter. I mean, ultimately, these are all things, and we're gonna.
No, I mean the results being the 10.0.
10.0.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it'd be
Cut off
8
at
of
8.
them.
Yeah.
I think that's what I remember, but I'm open if we
No,
decide
I
to
think,
change
I
it
think
or.
that's
I
right.
think you're right.
Down the road, as things, get ticked off, you can always add to that,
And some may come off for factors outside of our control or recommendations, but
100%.
Yeah, right.
Was it still, I don't, Jay and I were kind of trading meetings back and forth, for a while, so I'm not sure if I was there in January, but I thought I remembered that maybe moving forward, the BDC after submitting this would then, it would be part of your monthly, quarterly, whatever, agenda to look at the things that you think you can participate in, or, maybe not, maybe control is not the right word, but, investigate, make recommendations on. Something like, number 4 is keep website current for communication purposes. BDC might, look at other, communities and say, hey, they have a really cool economic development webpage. Like, I think Algonquin's the one that I always really liked myself. Some communities have an economic development website that's separate from their village website. And
Yeah.
so stuff like that on each of the things that you think you can participate in. And that would just be some of that ongoing work that you do.
well, and I think like the big one that would probably be a longer term project is the top one, which is the development of a comprehensive plan.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, and I think that's probably one where the idea of stakeholders, of additional people in the community might have insight into that. That might be one of those areas where, at least have it, because I remember when Bill Swalwell, he participated in the last economic development, comprehensive plan, that they would have committees. There was like a series of, committees with, and I don't think it was definitely was not just village board members. It was multiple people from outside that at least contributed some ideas into that. Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of people have a lot to say about,
I think to what Josh was saying too, though, as we go through these, it'd probably be good to say, is this within our charter? Is this outside our scope? But it's still really important.
Right.
So it just means like, I think part of the presentation is not just here are the top things we've identified, but also what is the charter of an economic development committee going forward?
Mhm.
And what does that look like?
Would you almost have like a primary and then support? So we think this falls into X, but with the support of Y and Z. So for example, the SOB program. This might fall within, the primary is beautification, but with the support of the BDC and the village board.
I think that's where Ryan's talking about the stakeholders. It's like who would be that, and then who are the people that should be
Parks and Rec or
involved?
something.
Yeah, so break it out, instead of having one lump sum of people, who would be the quote unquote owner,
Yeah,
right?
And would it be divided in subcommittees then if it was,
Or
if
just
need be, or?
input, it's maybe it's incumbent upon whoever, if there is like facade program, it's incumbent upon beautification committee to solicit the necessary commissions and or boards for input, but ultimately it's kind of residing with them. They're like the steward of.
right. The process is they walk through the application with the person, they make the recommendation to the BDC, BDC makes the recommendation to the board. So in that case, you have, like you said, owner is beautification.
Yeah.
BDC and board would be stakeholders.
Correct.
I think like when you look at keep website current, owner is the village staff, stakeholders may be PR committee and BDC.
That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that some of these things are more complex than others, like keep website current is just an ongoing staff function, but if there's something that a BDC member or the PR committee says, hey, we found this is cool. Staff, you might want to consider this, for these reasons. And like the comp plan, I mean, statutorily, that's what the planning and zoning commission, but it's a really big project that involves BDC members, outside organizations, general members from the community. I mean, I mean, to really do a comp plan right, you can get grants and stuff for it through CMAP. They just happen to not do comp plans in this last round of funding. But yeah, it can be a 6 months to a year process of multiple workshops, and you get, landscape architect planning people involved, and, some communities have a chapter on sustainability, so then they spend time focusing on that, and that can be a really big undertaking, which is something that we were intending on starting up with. We had some money in the budget this year for it, but CMAP did not release it as part of the programs this year. So we just have to wait till October.
And I think there's some things on there that the recommendation will be like, we have no part in it.
Yeah,
Like,
no, absolutely. Yeah.
continually expand infrastructure. I don't know that BDC plays a part in that, right?
No.
That's really village staff along with potentially county and fire department, township, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think all you could really do is recommend to the board, hey, when you're doing your budget, make sure you keep infrastructure in mind, because that's important to businesses.
Right.
Yeah.
What are the current village committees?
So there's the BDC, or soon to be EDC if we change it over. There's the PR committee. And then there's the budget committee. And then there's public works.
Planning, zoning,
Oh, yeah.
uh,
Sorry, I was thinking of the ones trustees are on. Planning and zoning is a separate committee. There's also the police commission.
that's
Is there
it.
Parks and Rec?
Parks and Rec is under the Hampshire Township Park District. They're a separate
Oh,
governmental
okay,
entity.
okay.
So like all the parks and outside of Henpeck Park, everything is the property of the park district.
Okay.
So if we were to look at item number 1, just sort of lay out what additional stakeholders do we think that we should, and just kind of reiterate, this is just giving information to the board, right? These are additional, that's really all it is. Other people besides the village board, or I guess you mean that could be a stakeholder that we list as well. I mean, it could be board members as well, but like who, as we kind of start through this, through 1 through 8, on number 1, what are some of the stakeholders do we think should be involved in that we should list as stakeholders that it would be good for the the board staff to include in terms of accomplishing
Well,
that?
who do we feel owns this one?
Yeah.
Like, let's do.
Oh, do that first.
And then,
Okay, sure. That's
and then,
yeah.
okay, if that's the owner, who are the stakeholders?
So comp plans, is it typically planning and zoning? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by state statute and village ordinance, the planning and zoning commission is the body that provides the forum for that whole process to happen. And then they end up making a recommendation for it to the board. So yeah, I would say that they should be the owner.
Great. Yeah, makes sense.
And then there's, all the taxing bodies, you need to plan out where you want your future schools, where you want your future parks, where you want your future.
Community, all governmental,
Right.
like local commissions.
Every taxing body within the village limits. I would say the BDC is a stakeholder on that one.
I mean, you would even want to get, some of the taxing bodies split their jurisdictions in Hampshire over on the side there.
Right.
And the planning area is 1.5 miles outside current corporate limits. So we'll even go further east. So you'd want to bring in Rutland Fire, Huntley Schools,
Right.
Okay.
and that kind of thing. 'Cause
Significant.
Most of Lakewood is Huntley tax base.
Township.
Yeah.
Rutland's.
Well, Rutland Township, but like Huntley School District is a big part of that neighborhood, goes to Huntley Schools, it's Huntley Fire.
Really?
In Lakewood?
Wow.
So I've kind of got a village board, obviously planning and zoning's gonna own it, right? Then probably village board, village staff, EDC, Hampshire Township, Rutland Township.
Yeah.
Hampshire Fire, Rutland Fire.
Is there something more broad that would encompass?
I think you can just say all taxing bodies.
Just put all
within
that,
village
okay, that's easier. But I mean, is that gonna be, I guess when it comes.
Because that
down to it,
includes township, the school districts, the park district, the
All,
fire protection districts, the county.
And the community as well?
Like the state, what about the, like developers?
Landowners?
I don't know that we'd involve develop. I don't know. It's an interesting point because part of me thinks you wouldn't want to involve them because you'd be presenting to developers of here's what we believe the comprehensive plan to be for the
Mhm.
areas, but I think you'd also want
Like one developing. this is
feedback
what
of
we
a
want you to-
developer says, I think that there is opportunity
Mm-hmm.
here or.
Yeah, I think, and you know, comp plans are done a lot of different ways across the country, but I think a lot of times they will bring in subject matter experts for this type of thing that says we want a think tank group that's gonna, you know, from that sector, you know, we want some commercial real estate brokers, we want some developers, we want.
So
to
not
tell us-
necessarily people who are developing in your
Not
community, but
necessarily, yeah, but
people in
like,
that
for
field.
example, Mike Azzola has been in here a lot. I don't know if he's got any active, he's got one active project, like a small little 7 acre parcel right now. But he is a person that knows the village, knows the market out here, knows all the players, and he can say, look, this area is just not gonna be class A office, because that's just not what's gonna come out here in the next 10 years.
Right.
Now, you might want to wait and see, because things can develop, and this is probably gonna be a 20 year plan. But they would provide some of that industry insight, I think, so that's a possibility, if that's what you think.
And I like that you called out that he doesn't have active projects, because my only concern on the developers, if they have active projects within the
Bias.
community, there could be a question of bias in their
I can see that.
interaction, and then, it could erode some of the trust of the comprehensive plan.
So all taxing bodies. Is that it? I think, or is there, community members as well? I mean,
So you brought that up, so
Yes,
community
someone brought that up.
survey or
Yeah.
community feedback.
Yeah, like external, insight, external,
Community
Yeah.
input or.
What about community organizations? And
yes, yeah.
that way it's not like
I like that.
we're gonna serve, we're gonna have 7,000 people involved in this, but we want to
Like the
involve,
historical society or.
right, or the Lions Club,
Mhm.
or,
Yeah, no, okay.
people that aren't taxing bodies, but they serve the community and
Mhm. In some.
in some
aspect,
way,
Right.
right?
I like that.
A lot of times they'll be kind of like, especially at the neighborhood level in large cities. Now, there's a case study about Boston years ago where they did neighborhood level planning, and they would do like the neighborhood, public leadership figures. So they would take like people from the churches and people from the after school programs and people from, the Little League, Little League, board of whatever that they had. And so I don't know if we've got a, junior whippers football or something that does, and there's a guy that's just invested in that.
We get plenty.
Oh, yeah.
So, people like that, you could just open a blind solicitation and say who's interested, or you could have people like, I know 3 people that would be good for this, and you just invite them in, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if we say community organizations, it also can include some of those type of things, like
Mhm.
Northwest Little League, the junior whips basketball, the
I think Northwest
Hampshire Youth
is
Football.
Pingree though. Would we include that in here?
Well, they serve the community.
Oh,
So I think it doesn't matter if they serve others, like the Huntley School District, we represent such a tiny portion of what they do, but they serve part of the community, so we would ask them for their feedback. I would see it almost in the same kind of
Okay.
way, just me personally, but.
Yeah, right.
I would also suggest some way to give representation to the current unincorporated, somehow unincorporated areas, to give some legitimacy, because you are gonna be planning 1.5 miles outside of the corporate limits. This became kind of a thing because, the zoning board of appeals and planning commission used to be separate. And by statute, the zoning board of appeals people had to be residents. The planning commission people could be residents of that 1.5 miles outside the corporate limits, because the planning commission is the body that has the comp plan and things like that. Now that we combine them, they all have to be residents, so there's not really an opportunity for unincorporated folks to be involved at the decision-making level.
And I'm thinking that could go a long way to helping those residents feel like they're a
Right.
part of the community. I'm thinking of that neighborhood up off of Higgins that was pretty vocal about the last public hearing.
Yeah.
To give them a voice in the comprehensive plan, or others in that type of situation as well.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
There's a lot of people that need to be at the table, so.
Yeah.
And this,
So I think you had said it earlier, it's almost like subcommittees, but planning and zoning would set that up. Of like,
Mhm.
Right,
there's a community organization subcommittee, there's the taxing body subcommittee, there's the non-resident
Yeah.
input subcommittee, and some of it could just
Geographical
maybe
kind of
be
thing.
like, we want you to take part in a survey, and who would be interested in being a person on the committee type thing.
Yeah.
But you're right, otherwise you're gonna have 55 people in here all trying to give feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think the organizations that do comprehensive plans do have a method
oh yeah.
in which to collect all feedback and.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, this is oftentimes, most of the time, something that's done by a professional, and like that's a specialist in this field. I know the NIU Center for Governmental Studies solicited the village a couple of years ago about it. And, we didn't have a budget at the time for it, so they wanted like $50,000, and that's not unreasonable, it's just we hadn't planned on it at that point.
But that's what that CMAP grant could
Yeah,
do
the
once they
CMAC
bring that
grant
back.
gives you some money for it, the village pitches in, whatever the local match is, 125%. And then CMAC gives you a lot of technical help to make it all happen as, like advisors, and people to help you, to guide you through the process.
Yeah, so maybe it's just, here's everyone we think you should involve in the owner per statute, and then
we can.
we
maybe
also
even
advise that you
involve-
hire a professional firm to look.
Yes.
What about like for this one, especially, the snowmobile club or?
Yeah, that'd be like a community organization,
What, yeah,
because
and they might be more
trails in the winter.
unincorporated,
Sure.
because, I mean, who has snowmobiles in town, really?
a lot,
Really?
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
But no, to your point though, the trails that they utilize, they
Right.
partner with the township and the
like this
village.
is
about
getting
where
in our
trails
way
go
now,
and-
we had this whole thing mapped out and now, yeah.
Assuming that we actually get winners from now
Yeah, I think it's on Friday or something,
Tomorrow night,
on. Tomorrow night.
tomorrow night, okay.
anywhere from a dusting to 92 inches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between there.
Well, nothing at all.
California right now is getting all our snow.
Yeah.
All I know is Dave Starr said it's gonna snow, so it's gonna snow.
is that?
He's the guy that knows.
You can feel it.
So in terms of the stakeholders on the development comprehensive plan, with the owner as planning and zoning commission, stakeholder being all taxing bodies, community organizations, it's with non-citizen or unincorporated community organizations.
Yeah.
Anything else we think in terms of stakeholders? Again, this is just advisory.
I think
That's enough.
in my, yeah.
So the next one is continually expand infrastructure. What are some of the stakeholders that we think, or who owns that? I guess the kind of
I
stakeholder
think
model.
public works.
I think it's actually the village, because Public Works does the streets and stuff, but then you have the water and sewer
Oh,
department.
that's,
They're
oh,
separate.
there.
Well, it's,
Yeah, it's public works, and then underneath that, there's
Like, there's
streets,
two
and
different
water and sewer, and then like technically engineering, but the public works committee tends to focus on roads.
Got it.
Mostly.
yeah, they don't really do the cellular or the high-speed internet. So Village Services, an old committee, the one I used to have before, that did like cell towers, and we were kind of the point of contact for ComEd and
Sure.
those NICOR stuff like that. That committee was dissolved with the intent that all of those conversations should happen with village staff.
Okay.
And so that's where I don't know if that's more of like a village staff with Public Works Committee being a stakeholder.
Yeah, sure.
That makes sense. I mean, staff puts together the capital improvement plan for the board to consider and everything, so.
So village staff is the owner. Public Works Committee is a stakeholder.
Then village board will also be a stakeholder or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Okay.
I think village board's a stakeholder.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I agree.
I think BDC is a stakeholder in this one, because we talk about infrastructure for new business growth. Like if, let's say we're having conversations with people that want to develop a high-tech corridor, or,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, or a retail area, what kind of infrastructure is needed there?
Or yeah, just even give.
I mean, when you were on the board, the north-south water connection was like a major focus on helping to grow business, because we couldn't sustain additional businesses till that got done. And that's just infrastructure.
Is that done?
Yes.
It's all done.
Just as another example, we looked into, some, EV charging stations, like the fast chargers for downtown. And the electrical infrastructure downtown is just not prepared for it. we had a company come out and do some site visits in our 2 municipal lots, and they were like, yeah, there's common pools here, we can check on it, and then they came back, and were like, no, we can't, there's not enough power for that juice.
You get brown out downtown.
Yeah.
About that.
But I would agree, VDC is for this. Yeah, especially as we expand, if we have cell service.
What about looking
It's
into like Starlink services? Just for, instead of.
Oh, well, so now,
Because now they have it where you can get it like the business service and it's gonna expand over a greater area with.
well, what I understand now is that T-Mobile 5G hotspots are now available in Hampshire. Or you can just, they send it to your house, you plug it in, and you get high-speed internet.
5G.
5G.
Oh,
And it's 150 download night, 150 meg download speed. Just by plugging this little cube in.
Yeah, they were talking about this at the ILCMA, Illinois City County Manager Association Conference in like 2020, where it was T-Mobile making the presentation. I thought it was maybe AT&T, whatever. They were making a 5G presentation, like unrolling 5G, and it's not just better internet, it's a total platform shift away from towers to spots, where their vision is that, you know, like every utility pole, as you drive down Main Street will have this, your car will have it, every business will have it, so it'll just be seamless all the time, everywhere. As opposed to like a cell tower that covers ranges.
So the need for.
but you have a good
high-speed-
point is that like looking at alternative infrastructure opportunities that are out there as a part of this, right? Like
Mhm.
Starlink.
Right.
example. I think,
They're expanding
solar,
right now.
solar
in this
farms and
area.
solar things is another one that's starting to come up. If you go down French Road, there's
Yeah.
a farmland that
Mhm.
somebody has
Yeah.
developed into a solar farm.
Yeah.
So I know that was something we were talking, that had come up. I think it was a board meeting where it came up that
We had,
like the water,
yeah, well, there's two things in the last year. One of them is that we had a solar company looking at a piece of property that was just outside of Hampshire, actually, to put in a solar farm, and they were talking about annexing maybe, but there were too many parcels away. But then the other one is that, we've got a proposal from a company called Keystone Solar to put in a solar field behind our wastewater treatment plant. There's a big area back there that would power like 95% of our solar plant at no extra cost to the village.
90% of what?
98% of the power that we use at the wastewater treatment.
Oh,
Like it would power it, and then, you know, if it's cloudy, we just draw from the grid. When it's putting out a lot, we get credits by pumping it into the grid, and they build the whole thing, they maintain it for 20 years. And what we kind of have to gamble on a little bit is the rates, because we will lock in a rate schedule for 20 years. And so we kind of have to
energy
gamble,
rates drop,
right?
you pay more.
Historically, we don't, but
That's
With
interesting.
more
I
EV
saw
cars
something on that.
there's no way it's
Solar
dropping.
thing.
Wow.
that, you know, that's another example. Another one being the FEMA grant that we got to improve the stormwater situation at Park and Rin, where there's some businesses that we're working on now. So
And I wouldn't be surprised if something emerges in the next 5 to 10 years that we're not even talking about. Right?
sure.
Well, and just, I mean, from what you and Jay have shared, the capital projects plan that you're working on is like a $50 million.
It's when we did it 2 years ago, it was $65+ million of known expenses, and there was a ton of things on the list that we have no idea how much they're gonna cost. We've never gotten.
Like
You don't have to go
fixing flooding in Panama, like
Oh.
old water main systems.
Yeah.
In case anybody is ever curious about it, it's just hampshireil.org/CIP.
Oh,
And I mean, the list is long. Hold on, let me get to the bottom here. This is all the stuff that was just in the first 3 years. Yeah, this is the list. So I mean, this is just infrastructure projects. $1 million here, $1 million there, a big $12 million for like what we estimate to be the remainder of the village, old water lines. And then, you know, that's still infrastructure totaling 22.6 million. And we have all the vehicles that we knew were gonna need to be replaced in the next several years. And then building improvements, and then the streets equipment, utilities equipment, police equipment. So Yeah, it was 37
Wow.
million. And it gets bigger every day.
Sure.
Yeah, because that, to your point, that's what's known.
Yeah.
Right, what's gonna happen in 5 years or 6 years.
Yeah,
So in addition to the Business Development Commission, the Public Works Committee, any other stakeholders on continuing to expand infrastructure that we can think of?
planning and zoning, they got stakeholder.
They don't really get into infrastructure too much.
No.
I think that you'll have other people brought in based on the project, like if they need to bring in KDOT. Or if they need to bring in a utility.
Right.
I think that's where staff will bring them in, but they
Right.
wouldn't be a part of planning what needs.
And that's it, yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. And this is just highlighting, who they should consider taking input in.
The one thing that stands out to me here is who identifies like road, not improvements, but like road safety, like in terms of street lights and stoplights and things like that in the village. Who drives that conversation?
Like when a stoplight is needed.
Yeah, correct.
So for the existing village, it is what it is. There are federal and then state supplemented, there's this big thick handbook for road signalization and signage. Uniform control standards or something like that. So anytime a development comes in, for example, Prairie Ridge coming in to add homes to Prairie Ridge north of Kelly Road, part of their deal is they had to do a traffic impact study, and that showed that with the addition of the school site right there at that main intersection, it's gonna warrant a stoplight. So like, that's just part of the engineering for a development moving forward.
Is that why they haven't put even a stop sign? There's like a three-way where there's no stop sign anyway. Right, when you're turning in on Kelly is it Kelly Road? Yeah, into the high school. No, not Kelly. It's, Big Timber.
Oh,
That
yeah,
development.
that's gonna get stop signs.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
we're actually.
There's
doing
like not one. And I'm like, there's high school kids,
Yeah, that's-
not stopping
that.
nowhere.
Those are the type of traffic studies that go through when they have the development, but to the existing area.
Like I'm thinking like Ellen Road, right? There's three main roads where there tends to be a lot of
Or like
accidents.
Briar Hill and 72.
Yeah.
Yeah, that state, right?
Yeah,
But
parts of, I think Allen, isn't that considered state? Or is that a
county.
Or county, yeah.
County,
So yeah, certain things are county or state controlled, and then,
got it.
I mean, if it's a village local road, we've got some pretty good, kind of leeway authority to say, despite not quite meeting the warrants, we can still put in, stop sign for safety reasons or whatever the case. If it's a state road, you gotta meet the warrants.
Like we were able to make the decision, I think you were on the board when the decision was made near Siler Park to reduce the speed limit on, what road is that goes by Siler?
Jefferson, I think.
Jefferson. That goes by the Little People
Yeah.
Playtime, so that speed zone was put in as a park speed zone, because it was found out that we can change a speed zone specific in next to a park, right? So in the same way you can for a school.
Yeah.
And so, like, the park district came and asked for that, and then it was evaluated by the board. So those type of things we have power about. I don't know that we can just put a stoplight in because we want to.
I have a question. What about like on Briar Road and 72?
Oh, we've tried.
So not signage, but to ask the landowner, because the land is so high
Yeah.
that's to just dig down a little bit, even if the village would help them pay for that, just to get,
That's
a
an
better
issue that's
view.
as old as the village
Yeah.
itself,
It
unfortunately.
is.
I mean, we actually had a petition to the state and to the county
Sure.
forever. I mean, before I got on the board, we're on their list at some point to add some sort of signal stoppage, but it's just from what I've been remembering, unless anything's changed, it just hasn't risen to the level.
The visibility though.
But that,
they-
yeah, that
you
landowner
know,
has a right to.
The landowner could flatten that down a little bit for better, at least better visibility while we wait.
I don't know if that conversation's ever happened.
I'm pretty sure.
Not since I've been here. I mean, we've talked
I
about.
mean, I just know from, that was like Mike Reed's, like, when he was on the board, you could ask him again, but I know that.
Because it's a nursery right there, right?
Yeah.
It is, so that berm that's there
Yes.
also prevents a lot of stuff from coming on, because they plant the nursery right up to that berm, so it's almost
Yeah.
acting as a barrier or a barricade.
Yeah, but if we put something a little.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's been pounded.
It's crazy.
For a
I
while.
feel like.
And the
I'm
hard
gonna
part
shovel
is-
myself.
And I don't blame any of the residents for feeling this way. They feel like the village should be able to go do something, and unfortunately,
Yeah.
it just,
We're not even in,
It is legally not allowed for us to do so.
it's not even in our, jurisdiction. All right, so Business Development Commission, Village Board, Public Works Committee. Anybody else that we think is a stakeholder for continuing expanding infrastructure? We think that's a good list.
It's good.
Okay, so facade program, owner beautification. Well, yeah, I think that makes sense, correct? In addition to that, I think Business Development Commission should be BDC at this point,
And Village Board.
Village Board.
That's it.
All right, keeping website current. Is that staff?
Who's
I
that?
think that's village staff.
Village staff, you think?
They're the
Who
owner.
does that now? Who
Staff.
updates it, the staff?
Well,
This-
one of
this-
many.
this gentleman.
Josh does.
You're looking at it.
It's gone a long way, though. When we first started BDC, that was like that was the first thing that we really worked on.
Yes.
And, it's a lot better than it was at one point, that's for sure. So this is good. Anybody else? Obviously, we said PR committee is a stakeholder in that, I think for sure. BDC, again,
Any commission, right?
I think anybody whose information is on there. I mean, maybe all boards.
The chamber, is that-
All we have on there is a link to their page, that they're on.
Oh.
They run their own page.
Yeah, I mean, you could put down any boards. I mean, I'm thinking of some of the content that's on there, like, there's a lot of content about the planning and zoning commission and the process for development permits on there. That the commission itself doesn't really do anything with that. It's, you know, staff that makes that transparent for them.
Yeah.
So I don't think they would get involved too much in it, but, certainly if they wanted to, they could.
Yeah, as far as like, when I think of stakeholder, I think of the group that it should be strategically involved, not just like reviewing their section, but
Correct.
talking about, hey, we need to add something that speaks to this audience, or we don't have, I mean, we talked about a brochure for a long time.
Very.
Yeah, and so like, do we put a digital brochure? That could be like a strategic thing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, or if you're hearing from new businesses that come in like, hey, it was really difficult to understand, you know, the zoning process to get my thing rezoned. And then you're like, well, did you see the website? And they're like, yeah, I just didn't. And then you know, the BDC can talk about it and say, these are the improvements that you made to that portion of the website. So that would be part of your, you know, like
Like
ongoing work
navigating
that you could do.
the website,
What's that?
like navigating the website?
Yeah.
You know, navigating, saying, you know, this commercial development guide that, you know, staff created is good, but it's really unclear for these reasons. So can we update that kind of thing? So I think the BDC could have a role there if it wanted.
Okay, so PR committee, village board, BDC. I think so. Okay. Analyze opportunities for state and federal funding for big projects. Who owns that? What do you guys think?
I wonder if that takes a very similar path as number 2. Sounds like it could.
Administrator?
Who does that now? Yeah.
So,
The village staff?
This guy.
yeah,
No, Jay and I both do. We've got several outlets that we get, you know, reports, whether it's every month or every quarter from like this congressional office or this organization, and then we comb through it to see what the village might be eligible for. But by all means, if you find something that you think is good for something that you've talked about, send it to us and we'll check it out.
Yeah.
You know, one of our trustees did that not long ago for some kind of housing grant, and like looking good, and then we got to that one part in eligibility that was about low to moderate income.
Modern income. How did I know that was coming?
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we always look into it, and we are constantly worried that we're gonna miss something, so by all means, let us know.
So owner, village staff.
Yeah.
Stakeholders, any village committee.
Right.
Would you all agree? Is there somebody outside of the village that should be involved?
And
Should the chamber, should the,
I
Parks.
mean, yeah,
well, because they're their own body, like they just, announced they got awarded an OSLAD
yeah.
grant, so they applied for their own grant.
They don't-
So
Okay.
this was under the lens of infrastructure, so. So
This is an infrastructure, it's just analyze opportunities for state and federal
That's-
funding for big projects. Oh, it was
But
under
it's
the
under-
infrastructure portion.
Ways to pay for those
Yeah.
new projects, basically.
So that might.
You're
narrow
saying it's
down.
just infrastructure projects?
It was under that lens, it doesn't have to be, but in terms of stakeholders, it's
Yeah.
probably under that.
So are you saying very similar then to
No.
the continually expand infrastructure one?
If we want to keep it purely to infrastructure projects. Those tend to be the biggest ones.
They are. Would Streetscape be infrastructure fundamentally? Was that project an infrastructure project?
I mean, with how
I
much,
mean, I know there was a lot of infrastructure that was included in
like
it.
70% of the whole budget went to stuff you don't
Infrastructure.
see.
Yeah, I mean, it was it was a federal economic development program, but it was all about making the area physically better for
Right.
businesses, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
But police is another area. I mean, the police commission wouldn't be involved because that's not their role, but
Yeah.
like the police officers and our chief, you know, they work on grants like for our new simulator that we're getting. If you're not aware, we're getting a virtual training simulator for de-escalation and,
Wow.
there's other stuff out there for radios and body cams that they look into.
I think I'm the only one in Northern Illinois,
Yeah,
and so
well, St. Charles has got one, but ours is gonna be better.
ours is a 300-degree.
Yeah, there's like,
Really?
Fully immersive simulation for de-escalation techniques, and we're gonna partner and have other police departments that can come in and utilize it for their training and tests.
That's awesome.
And all of that was grant money.
Yeah.
100%.
That's great.
Okay. So, I mean, should be all,
But I consider
Village
that part of
departments?
staff. Yeah.
right.
yeah, all village. I mean, I've got owner village staff, but, you know, police would be, it's not part of village staff, or is that, I guess
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah, they're staff.
So is there anybody, I mean, that just seems to be a very specific,
Is there anything grant wise, you see that falls outside of that lens? You look at a lot, so.
I mean, there's all kinds of grants for stuff. It's just, you know, there's stuff for historic preservation of, you know, museums and there's stuff for libraries.
But they would apply for all of it.
Right. You know, there's agricultural programs for things. There's educational stuff that I don't know if the schools really apply for. It's more of what, there's like a lot of nonprofit stuff too, you know, that gets sent out, but most of the stuff that applies to the village, I would say, is largely infrastructure. I mean, if you think it's similar enough, you could even just make it a part of number 2 and just say, continually expand infrastructure and seek, you know, grant funding.
but it almost seems like what you're talking about, there's more beyond infrastructure, like the police, well, we just got the grant for that. And to me, those are two separate things.
Yeah, I agree, because like body cameras.
Because infrastructure to me is obviously critically important, and while there is a crossover between the two, you know, the idea to me is I just want to make sure we as a village continue to seek other people to pay for the stuff we need, because we don't have enough money to do all the things that we need to do. And I think that's just something that we didn't do in the past, truthfully. I don't think until the new administration came in, and obviously you guys have a lot more time to, you know, because we have full-time staff, but that could be a huge differentiator between the things that you can get done and the things that you can't.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, how much would that cost the police to do themselves? How much was that grant for?
Over 600,000.
Holy, wow.
Wasn't it?
I think it was like
Or
270,000.
270. It was a lot higher than that.
Still, that's.
It's still.
Yeah, it's still multiple hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of
Plus,
dollars.
plus the build out that's gonna be in the rent.
Yeah.
Is that how much we spent on facade improvements so far?
Total.
Total, it's been about 700 and some thousand.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Okay, and that's really all hands on deck, the village staff being the main.
Yeah.
Okay. Code enforcement.
Village staff.
Well, and I mean, I would imagine a lot of this is going to be village staff.
Well, I don't know if it's, would that be village staff or would it be the vendor? For code
Oh,
enforcement?
I would consider them staff as well. I mean,
Oh, okay.
they're
Safe
built.
Safe built.
Safe.
I would add also the fire department. We just passed in a recent board meeting that they will do code for all of the fire inspections, fire code for building, rather than safe built sending people out. The
I
fire,
only see half you.
sorry, rather than safe built going out to do the inspections for the fire part of it, the Hampshire Fire Department has a inspector on staff, and so that person will take on that code
What is
responsibility.
safe? Is it third
Safe Built's our third party that does, like, let's say you want to put in a patio, so you need to have them come out and they're gonna give you the permit, the building permit, you're gonna fill out the form on our website. They're the company that processes the form. They send out the inspectors based on, are you doing plumbing or electrical or concrete or whatever it may be, and then sign off that you're within code, you've met all the permit requirements. On new construction, they do like occupancy. They give you the permit of occupancy, so we don't have a buildings department that does our own inspections. So we hire them as a third party, and what happens is, like, if the permit fee is $100, I'm throwing just fake numbers out there, if it's $100 for a fence, Safe Built keeps 80% and the village gets 20%.
Okay.
And so that's how they cover their expenses, and then they process it, so they keep the database. And I guess that's why we would consider it like a staff, because they are contractual and all that.
Yeah, just like EEI or our attorney is a third panel external person.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna reiterate what you said there about the fire district. I mean, the code enforcement was really property maintenance related stuff, and it still is, and Safe Built handles that. And the fire district is gonna take on this new program of anytime there's a change in the tenant of the building, anytime there's a new business that moves into a building, you know, like there's gonna be a trigger right there for the fire district to go in there and make sure that that building is safe, because once it's built, there hasn't been a trigger point to ensure that the smoke alarms still work, that the staircase is solid, that their exit points are still valid. So they're gonna become a big role in enforcing the life safety code.
It's good.
I didn't even know they weren't currently doing that. Like, I know Elgin's fire department will go and look at.
So they do annual inspections for current businesses, but that's different than like the initial building inspection. For
Oh,
a new
okay,
building
okay.
or a new,
Makes sense.
or a remodel, or like a new tenant, like you were talking about.
Okay.
So, for example, when Gardenberry went in, the fire Safe Built at the time.
Right.
Would go in to check all of the fire code to make sure they were up to code, because it's a new tenant in that building.
Mhm.
Instead of them doing it from now on for those life safety codes, the fire department. Will be the one that does it. Which is good, because then they're seeing everything at the
Exactly.
beginning.
Yeah.
So the code enforcement, owners, village staff, we also have the fire department. I know BDC had a role to play in the downtown area, specifically code enforcement was something that we talked, extensively about.
Yes.
In terms of the SOD program, so I think BDC should be included.
Yeah.
Anybody else? And we're assuming village board is
On all of
everything's,
these.
Yeah.
List them. We don't need to list them. Anything else for code enforcement?
No.
Okay. Keep incentives in the budget is the owner. I would think.
Is the village board the owner, or would we say the budget committee?
We
Oh,
could-
sir. I had no idea. There is.
Mhm.
So the budget committee works with staff and goes through with a fine tooth comb the entire budget before it's presented to the board. So like on the first meeting in April.
Yeah.
The budget that's presented to the board will have already gone through multiple budget committees. They've signed off on it as the budget to present as a final presentation to the board, rather than it going through multiple board meetings.
Correct.
So like when the PR committee or us, when we say, hey, we'd like to keep 100K in for the facade program, we give that to the budget committee.
So we've got budget committee, I think owner, is everyone comfortable with that? I
Yeah.
think that makes perfect sense. Village board obviously being a stakeholder as usual, and then, BDC only in terms of the facade program for sure. I think.
Well, I think there's other incentives we talked about, didn't we, with this? Like, there could be.
Sure.
TIF district incentives, there could be.
Yeah.
Sales tax abatement.
Sales tax,
That would contribute to the
by
development.
the way, the cabinets, they moved out of Hampshire, so there's no longer the.
And great maturity.
But yeah, so I think there are other types of incentives outside of the facade that the BDC could or should have a voice of at least recommendation.
100%.
Like if based on our different roles outside of here, if we know that this type of industry or business responds well to this type of incentive, that could be something the BDC asks the board to consider, type of thing.
Yeah, great. Very great. Anybody else for keeping incentives in the budget? Any other groups that we think?
What about the chamber? They're an independent organization, but they are, I mean.
Well, other types of stakeholders are thinking about these people.
Would they come through the BBC and then the BBC goes to the committee or commission?
Well, I mean, would they need to, or could the executive director of the chamber have a relationship with Jay or Josh, and just in conversations, they're like, hey, we're hearing in our national chamber, because I think there's a national organization chamber.
Definitely.
I feel like I should have known that, I think, that we're seeing incentives in other communities driving business like XYZ, that could be a direct conversation, like rather than saying they need to go through a proper channel.
No, yeah, but still 100% agree. I think the BDC though should work in tandem during that conversation. Like for the chamber to talk to the village staff without the BDC having any insight into what, you know what I'm saying?
I thought you meant like they had to go to the
Oh,
BDC
no.
and then the BDC would go to the village. Gotcha.
Yeah. It is transparency wise, I think it's good. So probably apply to. Or can emphasize it.
Yeah.
Defense.
So we want to list the chamber as a stakeholder?
Sure.
Okay. Again, these are just suggestions.
I mean, if nothing else, the chamber is a good, partner for marketing incentives that the village does have. A lot of community preaches in the side program all the time to people, so.
And the last one, ensure diversification of housing to promote diverse customer base. It's exciting to.
I think it could be, I kind of shy away a little bit because they are a body that likes to be, I mean, by statute, they're supposed to be a quasi judicial body where people bring them something and they investigate, they get, they hold public hearings, they get facts, and then they present a recommendation to the board. They don't really start a lot of new initiative type things. Comp plan being kind of the big exception, like they do that once every 10 or 15 or 20 years and kind of plan out things. So, yeah, I would say that probably wouldn't originate in planning and zoning. It would be more of a, after the village has adopted such policy or has adopted such vision, the planning and zoning commission then uses that and takes that into account when they're making, holding hearings and making recommendations.
Yeah, it's more, is that village board, is that something that happens maybe through annexation process or with developers?
Some communities have a diverse housing policy or something along those lines where they say X% of your developments have to be this type of housing.
I mean, that was a big thing in California that just passed, is a lot of communities had policies that stated you couldn't do multi-unit buildings, residential multi-unit buildings within a community's boundaries. And they passed a law in California that's no longer. Like you can't limit the type of residential you can. So I think that there are those, like, I feel like it's part of the comprehensive plan, so there's some of that, but
No, I mean, that, yeah, I was one, yeah, I think that it's possible to
I don't know
go.
who owns it, like, do you think the bill, like, does?
Because I remember we had negotiations with Tuscany Phase Two, I believe. And a lot of that was around housing type.
I was gonna say.
Part of the debate that we had was some sort of horse trading that was going on.
Well, we've recently had that with Crown, doing a couple of presentations of the north of Kelly area where they were just doing concept plans of here's what we're thinking, housing density types of houses.
I was gonna say, like, it tends to go right to the village board first. Before it, right, like most developers come to the village board and say, this is what we're thinking.
Right.
Right, before anyone else even knows about it.
Right.
So.
Well, because they want to get the flavor of.
Yeah.
Before I spend money on.
Yeah.
This is reasonable. So we think village board.
Yeah, that kind of policy surely is gonna have to be driven by the board, because there's either gonna have to be ordinances passed by them, or there's just gonna have to be a, a commitment among the trustees as a group to ensure that they ask the developers to include diversification in their developments. Now, to be honest, this, what's happening with Prairie Ridge might be the last time to really consider that for a long time. Because then Crown will have 2,000, 3,000 lots on paper. I don't know if anybody's gonna come in and try to compete with that for a while, but it's good to have it on the books.
Well, the
anyway.
other ones already exist, like
Right.
Tuscany already exists.
Right.
Okay, so just village board at this point, I think, is the owner, I don't know, any additional, do we want to put for stakeholder planning and so on? Because like you said, because again, economic development strategy is just sort of an idea that we want people to keep in mind as we're making decisions, right? So we're, some of the other people that we want to share this vision with, I guess, in a way, maybe we should have said it that way at the beginning. It's just other people that we want input from and want to be aware of.
And I think planning and zoning have, on this particular thing, planning and zoning would have their say as part of the comp plan process, where they say, this is the part of the village that we want standard single family, this is the part of the village where we want, townhomes and multi-units, this is the part of the village where we want apartments someday.
I mean, but Tuscan, the different subdivisions have to still go through planning and zoning at some point.
Sure. Yeah, when they go to actually subdivide and get those final plats approved so that they can start building.
Is the Prairie Ridge done?
That's the north of Kelly.
Yeah.
That's part of the next village board meeting.
On the 16th.
I think they've gone through planning and zoning and now it's going.
That's
to
one
the
that
village
at
board.
the middle school.
That was one of the two.
Oh.
The other one for the middle school is the
Shire.
properties like Shireland and then the one on Higgins and 20. So that's why I was like, let's not have this be a part of that meeting because there's two different
Oh, 100%.
planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Or I shouldn't say planning and zoning, but
Hearing
public
here
hearings.
4 hour meetings, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Good.
Not that I don't enjoy them, but
Well, and I think it's important the board hears these recommendations and is able to like,
it's not.
it's not just another thing on the agenda, it's something that they can care about.
Considering the time we put into.
Not that they wouldn't care, but
No, of course, I trust me, I get it. It's on a 4 hour meeting specifically.
I was not at it, but the public hearing at the planning and zoning, I understand, went for multiple hours. And that was that both in that one?
That was just first of all, it was about a half an hour at the first meeting, and then we had to continue it to the middle school because there were so many people.
Right.
That lasted about 3.5 hours.
Okay, yeah.
For just the light property, the Shireland and
Yeah,
associated.
because part of the public hearing is you have to provide a venue for anybody who wants to speak to legally be able to speak. So that's why the switch had to happen.
It's very long, but all very good, civil and people with very compassionate speeches. Not always technically accurate, but it's their homes, it's their lives, so
To voice their opinion, for sure.
they weren't just complaining, I'll put it that way, they had real reasons to,
That's good.
they wanted to speak up.
In terms of presenting, it seems like the 60 to 70% is telling the board how we got here. Is like the process, the vetting, the analysis. And then, then you have this as being the crescendo. Because it was thorough. I mean, it was.
Yeah, we didn't just make these up.
Yeah.
Right?
We didn't Google it. This wasn't a picture.
A couple of birch trees died. And then the paper, that was used for.
You got to pull back out the electronic survey tools.
Yes, yeah.
We're back into that. Yeah.
Survey monkey, let's dust that off and.
So what are some of the other, I think that's a great idea, though, is to really talk about the process of got here. And originally the instruction from Jay, that was just really his, his direction as to what we were gonna do. Talk a little bit about that, talk about the process of how we got here. Obviously lay out the sort of final results. I think we should also present the entire matrix to them, of all the kind of, how we kind of got the different lenses, talk about the lens strategy and the
Yeah.
goals. But then, obviously this being the final
But
deliverable.
it's important that we present something that's actionable, and so we narrow that down.
What other things do you think we should talk about? When we present this.
I think I'm always one for if there's a meeting and we're presenting something, there should be actionable next steps. If it's not the end of a project, like, it's the end of our part of the project, but then what would be the recommended
recommended
next steps for the board?
What are those things?
Is she gonna work? Is she gonna work? Just kidding. And you get this, and you get this surprise.
Exactly. We just picked someone on the board, like, we nominated you to
Yeah,
implementing this
There you
entire
go.
project.
Have fun.
yeah.
Lionel,
You're in charge of
everything. Yeah.
Maybe it's just
Yeah.
reiterating that not only do we think these are the 8 things that you focus on, but they are in ranked order. And, starting with the comprehensive plan, that will end up helping to drive some of the other motions. And so as the next step, we ask that you keep in consideration
Yeah.
the ordering of things.
Any journey you take, you need a map. Right? And with that, right now, we don't have the map. See, so we're at the whim of whoever walks through the door and wants to do something in the village. That, I know money is an issue, but outside of that, that could really drive so much of what we do, at least for a BC, in attending business or like talking with developers or right now, we can't showcase anything to them to say like this is our vision of where we're trying to go to. If we don't agree with the current.
Yeah.
I know there's a current one that's active out there, but a lot has changed since that was created.
I agree.
We should probably start the presentation with like what our problem statement was, right? Why did we embark on this? Why did we spend since
January, it was January
January?
2022.
Really?
It was breakfast at it was the Rose Garden back then. It was Jay and I. I'm like, what do you want us to do? Where are we going? We're done with streetscape. We gotta have something to work on.
Okay.
So it's January 2022, and so we worked on it for, a considerably long time, and I'm really happy with what we have. I mean, obviously, thanks in large part to Josh's help in addition to the work of the board.
Would you show everything on this list, but highlight just the ones that because I think it might be good for them to see the other parts of it.
I think Ryan had said, show the whole matrix.
Right.
Yes.
And
I'm
then
sorry.
like, here's everything that
Yeah, but I
was
think you're right.
thought of.
Yes.
And then the next step is, okay, then we went through a
Yeah.
prioritization exercise and here are the top 8 that are actionable.
That's right. And I'm even fine even providing the whole list as well, to them, but just these are the 8 that we feel like, just from a matter of pragmatism, we need to narrow the list, and these are the ones we think you should support, and then emphasize that it is an order of importance that we voted on. Obviously, the board can modify that in whatever direction they want to, we're just advisory board. But yeah, definitely. But I'm trying to kind of think of this idea of actionable items that you brought up, Aaron, because I do think that matters.
Well,
What are some of the, what do you think?
like from my side, if somebody said, okay, the BDC should focus on X, then we take it back as a BDC to ruminate on it and ideate of how we bring that to life. Right. And so you know, if we say, comfort, keep incentives in the budget and live somewhere. Let that group, if they're the owner, let them take it where it needs to go.
Yeah.
You know, they should know better than us.
So is the identification of owners and stakeholders the action item itself, in a way?
Could be.
I mean, I'm just, it's open for thought. I do agree with Aaron is, you know, I remember spending an entire Christmas break putting together a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year strategy to my boss. And worked so hard on it, delivering it on his desk. And then nothing ever happened with it. So, you know, and maybe that was my problem. I was, all right, so this is what you should do first and then second and third. But like, I mean, it is something worthy. I mean, just to leave something with, you know, we've done a lot of work, you know, maybe recommended action items that we think, or is the list itself already, to Dave's point, is it already sort of made that way to be a set of action items? I don't know. I just thought it was interesting that you said. What do you guys think, Megan, Liz?
I think the list itself is self-explanatory, but
Yeah.
if and then we're also going to be looking at it, what, quarterly as well?
So, I mean, if you look at the original idea, again, that we just sort of brainstormed was, you know, the idea of any sort of, you know, plan is you lay out a plan, you set a set of metrics that you're gonna measure yourself against, you go out and implement the plan, then you look and see how you know, done with those metrics, and then you modify as time goes on.
And maybe even ask the board, would you like us to expand on any of these?
Can I ask that question? Yeah, I think that's a good. Okay,
Or do you feel that you guys are prioritizing different things than we are, and we, you know?
I think like facade program, we've already talked about it, but, we've already developed a lot within the district we have. So we have talked in these meetings that do we expand? Do we go in different areas? That's something that if it falls within beautification, they will have those conversations to constantly improve it and enhance it. So even though it just says facade program, it doesn't mean like, okay, what should I do next? They probably already do know what they need to do to keep evolving.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say, kind of what you
So
were
unless they
saying.
had any questions or wanted it expanded, I think this is pretty straightforward.
Assigning responsible parties is kind of doing the actionable, because, I mean, like keeping a website current, that's very much easier to take action on than, okay, expand infrastructure, you know, so those people can decide that,
yeah, and how they think, right?
what to do next, yeah.
This is, yeah, really just sort of a set of, you know, markers in the future that we want them to sort of aim towards. No, I kind of think that way. I mean, are you comfortable with that, Aaron? Okay, I think that's good. So what I'll probably try to do is, you know, put together a presentation, you know, I'll share it with the group, look for feedback. We've got 6 weeks until it needs to be delivered. But you know, maybe you know, send it out to everybody, get, you know, if anyone's got any feedback, blah, blah, blah. And then you know, just remember, don't reply all. If you just do one, I'm sure. And then we'll kind of come to it, and then I'll go with Aaron to present. Anybody else who wants to come is more than welcome to come to that meeting and at least, you know, voice your opinion or whatever.
Yeah, I would encourage you to come.
Yeah, you guys should come. I think you've all worked hard.
But, and then if you need help while you're doing this.
Yeah.
Just reach out to anybody, you know,
100%.
like, cause that's a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, exactly. So I'll, you know, put something together, send it around, see what we think, and it's go time. We'll just drop it and wipe our hands along. No, I'm just kidding.
I'll get you a mic that you can drop it to.
All right, so, all right, hey, seriously, guys, awesome. That is really good. That took us a long time when we talked about that. That was a long time. I hope you're happy, Josh, and considering that you are a huge
I
part.
hope you're happy.
Well, I'm saying, I hope you're happy. No, I hope you're happy. I hope what this is ultimately what was intended. But I didn't know exactly what it was gonna be when we started, but, you know, from a group effort, I think we came to something that's, you know, useful. I mean, it's a nice tool that I think should at least help guide that, you know, village staff isn't having to try to come up with stuff on the fly, because I think in some ways that's what Jay was saying is, he really wanted to get a voice of, first what we think when we pass to the village board, and they, I would hope that you guys could work on it a little bit too, you know what I'm saying, not just thumbs up, thumbs down, I know a lot of times that's, when I was on the board, that's how it works, but, maybe, however you guys.
Well, and
decide
help
to do
us to prioritize with staff. Here are the things that we're gonna ask you to really
Yes.
focus on.
Yes, right, which is, I think, maybe that's the action items, that's the most.
Right.
important.
So it's not just on the board then.
Yeah.
Well, because the board isn't gonna be
Right.
I think. And it was even going towards this when you were on the board of trying to get out of the day-to-day, especially when Jay came on board. To not be in the day-to-day business of the village, but more on like the overall strategy,
Yes.
the strategic direction, helping to set the plan or you know what I mean? Vote and pass and ask staff to go action things within whatever the goals of the village were that the residents asked.
Right, exactly.
Rather than going to do it ourselves.
Right,
and
the
giving
long
it
term
to-
instead of.
Yeah.
Right, which is what we had to do.
Yeah, that's what I meant, like,
Administrator.
there was
There's a lot of work
time.
that trustees had to do that just wasn't being done anywhere else. And because of the limitations. Okay, fantastic, that's fine. All right, this next piece, we can just kind of, so I'm leaving. I'm retiring. So after 6 years of being on the Business Development Commission, village trustee, it is time for me to move on to other things in my life. My grown children are becoming more and more demanding on my time. And I feel as though, I think when I get to the pearly gates and I look at the big guy, I say 6 years is a good amount of time committed to the work of the people and, so which really, me not being here is not as important as, we're really in search of a chairman, to replace me after, I leave. And so, we don't have anybody that is necessarily, so anybody who's interested, I guess, my point of putting on the agenda was not just to make an announcement, gee, or like a farewell tour or anything like that, but it's to say, we're interested, if you're interested in chairing the committee, to just reach out to me. And then we'll coordinate with Aaron and with Jay and Mike, because ultimately this is an appointment that comes from the village
The
board.
village president appoints or nominates the appointment
Nominates
and the
and the
board
board.
ratifies it.
Board ratifies, so.
And I will say in full transparency, Ryan and I spoke and I did tell him or share with him that I feel it's inappropriate for the trustee member to be the chairperson of the board, that really my role is to be a representative of the BDC to the board, but also the board to the BDC.
Yeah.
And being a chairperson doesn't allow for that, so.
Despite the fact that that's what we think.
It is. But I think this
But I
is
get what you're
really
saying.
very
No, I
well.
get it. No, really the chairman, as you noticed, right, all you do is put together the agenda. At the end of the day, but that agenda, is obviously supposed to be in line with the vision, right? In a way you're supposed to be.
Well, you've done more than that. You've met with some interested businesses and helped to represent who the
Yeah.
village is. And
Yeah, no, I mean,
the chairperson can really.
The
make role
chairperson,
in it.
it's a great opportunity, I think, to leave your imprint on the town, right? So I know, one of the things I'm gonna walk away from with a lot of pride, and I think we should all, participate in, is the downtown is.
You did a great job. Thank you so much.
And it was
So
all of
much.
us.
Well, I know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like everybody, you did a great job as their leader and.
Yeah. And there's great opportunity, right? I mean, Hampshire is coming up on a phase of, I think, incredible growth. That's gonna really require that plan, this commission, I think, serves a pretty vital role. And if only because we have a lot more time to just discuss, a lot of times, the village board is a lot of action. You gotta kind of move through a lot of minutia stuff, but it is an opportunity to leave your imprint on the village in a way that's pretty cool. So I hope you guys would be interested in it. It's not, honestly, it's not as big a responsibility as it sounds.
She says subtly.
So, that's just, that's it. I was going to leave after I left as a trustee. And then Mike had called me and asked if I'd be willing to stay on for you know, a little bit longer until we got through the
Yeah,
streetscape
that's
project
right,
and stuff like that, which I was happy to do that. I didn't know we were gonna have a inflation crisis and that would extend another year, but which is fine, you know, I mean, it's been a great journey. And I think anybody who, you know, takes this next opportunity on, I think there's a lot of really cool opportunities to, like you said, leave your imprint on town. And, you know, so if you're interested in that, reach out to me. I'm gonna call Bill and Karen personally and talk to them. I was hoping that they have them there, but, you know,
When are you looking to?
so May will be my last meeting.
Okay.
So, and then I will be present to deliver the April 20th. I'll, you know, that'll be my
May,
the last.
the May
official-
BDC meeting will be your final meeting.
The May BDC meeting will be my.
So
So,
we're also gonna be searching for another commissioner.
now, I will leave this out there. If the person who leads feels that there's a benefit that I stay on as a regular member to them, then that's certainly something I'm willing to do for a period as well, to ease the transition over. So, you know, when we started this, it never had existed before. So you know, and I really give, I know Mike Armato, you know, most credit because he initiated the whole thing, but it certainly has been, you know, I've been the chairman for 99% of the time of its
Yeah.
existence. So I care very deeply about the commission. And so I want to see it continue. And not that I have any doubt with the people that are on it. I mean, you guys are all amazing. We've always had great people on this board. I mean, it's been remarkable when you really look at the quality of people that we've had. So I'm confident that it will, you know, continue and have success. But certainly I have, you know, I'm very interested in making sure that that transition goes as easily as possible. So, yeah, I'm willing to sit for a period too, so that we don't get kind of caught in that. We could look at the May 4th as a transition to a chairman, you know, new chairman perhaps, and then me sort of working with them for a period and then being a regular member for a period after that. And then, you know, going on.
Or even like
Is May 5th
consulting,
the
just a
swearing?
trail or, you know,
Yeah, and it's my passion is, but it's, it was my
just
passion.
want to make sure it stays.
I want to make sure it stays.
And I totally get it,
Yeah, and I wanted to land this plane and we landed this plane, which was, I'm very happy about, but, you know, I think it's time for new leadership. I think it's time for a new, you know, a new passion, a new energy. And I certainly want to be there for whoever that person is to help support them and going forward. But I know this group is fantastic, you know, and it should be as easy a transition. I remember I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I first started. And I had Art Swimkey in those first few years. And trust me, that was a bad time, I can tell you that, but we have a much calmer group at this point. Remember Swimkey? We couldn't do anything. We couldn't get through the agenda. We just-
I know it's not on this agenda, so
Yeah.
maybe we put it on the April one, but I would ask that we consider moving the May meeting then to the first Wednesday, May 3rd. The reason for that is it being your final meeting.
Yeah.
Having a new person interested to
Yeah.
go before the board. May 4th is when the new board is sworn in from the elections in April.
Oh,
And if we're doing swearing in, and that's usually the same meeting where the village president will assign committee.
Right.
Heads or chair people for what the committees are and committee assignments of the
Yeah.
board. So that may also be a good meeting to have the chairperson of the BDC voted on by the new board as well. Just, I'm trying to think about.
Yeah, no,
A meeting that
yeah.
is really of that purpose may work really well, and it just moves it up 1 week.
So-
If the board, if the committee is okay with that type of motion.
So I was imagining the May meeting, the first meeting in May being the nomination, the approval of the new chairman. Is that what you?
That's what I'm saying. That's May 4th is the
Got it.
village
Got it.
board meeting. So then my ask is that the BDC meeting be the 3rd, which would be your final meeting, and
And the next day they would,
then the next day, the new chairperson is proposed and nominated and approved, hopefully. And then from that point forward, it goes on with the new chairperson. Otherwise, technically, April would be your final. Right?
Yeah, that's actually what I was thinking, was April, my final meeting, but I can.
Oh, okay.
We can adjust to that too.
However you want to do it.
It's fine. Well, let's talk about it.
Okay.
And then we'll come up with a plan and.
I was just thinking that the nomination happening at the May 4th.
And I was hoping that I would not have had my family emergency last month and I was going to announce it during that, we'd have a little bit more time. But it's fine. Whatever we have to do to make it easy for the group is what we'll do. So, fine.
Is there, in terms of candidates, do we know yet who's trustee wise?
Oh,
Yeah, I can guarantee you the three running are gonna be elected. There are three
they-
people for three positions.
Okay.
Yeah, Eric, it's
Ran
Eric,
in the election.
Toby, and
Multiple-
myself.
We had 7 people ran.
Did you really?
So I shouldn't say that, there could be a write-in that takes
So
it.
contentious.
Yeah. I was like-
So there could be
I
a
was like, I'm
write-in,
gonna go campaign.
but there are
Yeah.
three current trustees, I'm in transparency, I'm one of them, that are running for three positions. So a write-in would be somebody that could overtake one of the three, otherwise it's 3 for 3 positions and it's not contested.
So was anyone else running against you guys?
No.
No, that's what I mean, there were 3 people that submitted packets for 3
And that's
positions.
it, okay.
Yes, sir. And I think it was the same way last.
It
You guys are
was
doing
last
great.
election.
The last election, it was that way.
Did you run against anybody when you
No.
ran? So, yeah, I was gonna say, so when I ran, we had 7 people for
Yeah.
4 spots. It was great. We had people getting thrown off the ballot. I mean, it was like,
I may be speaking out of turn, but I think
I think you're right.
the only contested one in our area right now is the library district for this coming election, meaning that there are more people running than outside of the school board as well, I think
Right.
has contested. There are other ones that are contested, but what I meant to say is the village right now, there are 3 people running for 3 positions. And I am in no way saying who I am recommending.
No,
This is not an election
yeah, would you,
discussion.
would you like to,
No.
No.
That is absolutely against the law and I will not say anything about it.
All right, so now we'll pass that. Please, if you're interested, reach out to me. Seriously. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is, Hampshire's very cool. I think we just pushed out.
Beautification.
Beautification. I don't, did they go on?
I never saw it. Do you know?
Did you see it? I approved it.
I saw something posted
Modifications.
online on Facebook, I thought.
Maybe.
Beautification.
Oh, I don't know if it was
No, it's
beautification.
BDC.
Oh, BDC.
I don't remember
Oh, yeah.
it being BDC. I thought there
Remember I
was.
said to you.
I read it, but I don't know. if
You
I
haven't
ever
seen it?
saw
Let me
I
ask.
remember seeing it. It's not on our website. Usually
Okay,
gets
so then
put
it
up
hasn't been
I
posted.
sent it to Heather. Maybe not. Okay, I will look into making sure. Because she finished it a while. I noticed she's doing, I saw one on Newman's,
Maybe that's the one I saw.
but it wasn't us, it was from the chamber. But it was the same kind of spirit of,
Yeah,
so, which is fine, I mean.
maybe that's the one I got confused about, because I thought I saw one talking about a local business and Newman's does ring a bell.
Yeah,
I just saw that on Facebook. So,
and I did read here. I don't recall seeing.
But so next will be RK Services, I'll send Jeannie and me that is a reminder, and I'll make sure that we get the BDC. But then any update on any new or existing businesses, Josh? Any, I'm sure there's 1,000 things.
Yeah, I mean, the big one is the rezone or zoning and annexation process for the light property that is Shire land.
Yeah,
The 38 acres at the corner of Higgins Road and 20, next to those unincorporated homes. And then they have another 164 acres. It's kind of behind El Jaloy, east of El Jaloy on the county line. So that's what the big public hearing was about, was their property. They had petitioned originally for M3 zoning, which is the just industrial district that allows for the most intense type of industrial uses up in that area to the north. And then on the property on Higgins Road, they had asked for M2, which is a more restricted type of industrial, but still allows for lots of things, including logistics. So there was significant dissent on that from both the public up in those areas, and then the Planning and Zoning Commission voted it all down unanimously. So it would still go to the village board. You know, the Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board, so their recommendation would be against it. So that public hearing for their annexation and everything for the board is scheduled for March 16th. There is a letter out on the website right now that the developer sent in to us that they're they've withdrawn their zoning petition. So that's out there in the public now. Not really sure procedurally what that means for the board meeting, but it's still gonna be at Hampshire Middle School, because that's where it was published for, and all of that, and
we still have the Crown one.
and the Crown will still be at the same time. Oddly enough, there was only 2 or 3 people that spoke at the Crown hearing for planning and zoning. So that's that one. They kind of talked to us and said that they might want to pull back and reevaluate. So that's the big one. Just by land anyway. Downtown here, Tatiana Rigoni closed on the corner of Washington and State. That building over there, she's going to be opening up the gaming cafe on the corner. I think she still has some licensing to get through and some construction work. And then the other half of her building that she bought, right, it's a 3,000 square foot building.
About the whole thing.
Yeah, she's gonna take the 1,500 square feet on the corner, and then she's looking to lease her.
She just bought part of it, right? I mean,
She bought
3,000, but there's a total of
6, I think.
6, so she bought
Still
half.
having a baker come
So she
in?
bought 3, she divided into 2
There's
spaces.
baker's
one will be gaming,
valuing
one
that
will be a
space.
rental,
Okay.
Systems rental.
Yeah, so there's been a bakery that's been interested in that space. As of this week or maybe late last week, there's potential ice cream shop that might go in there. They're kind of looking at the space and seeing, talking with Tatiana.
I smile with the ice cream because I remember we talked about bike paths and circling the
Yeah,
island communities, because maybe in the summer you want to come get an ice cream at an ice cream
Yeah,
shop.
yeah, right.
it is.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
So they came in asking about permits and how to get their food licenses and everything. They've got a family member that's done something similar, but this would be this person's first independent business venture, so I was just looking for some guidance. Also Joe Lazar's property there next to Casey's, between the Casey's and the psychic reader. He's had that sign up for a lot of years, coming soon. He is just waiting for IDOT to get back to him. So he's got engineering plans submitted to the village. He's applied for a village permit that's on hold. He's got to get IDOT comments back for his access on 72 in and out. And IDOT takes however long IDOT wants to take. So as soon as he gets through IDOT's phases, our engineering with the village should go pretty quickly. And he's planning on building this year, getting in the ground and digging the dirt this year. So we'll see.
Almost killed it because he built the village first. So what? I go, you can't build a strip mall in Hampshire. I go, some guy's building one, don't you know? He goes, oh, that's me. And I almost climbed over the table and strangled him. What have you built out there before here? What's wrong with you? So, yeah, he's told me, he's a good friend of mine. He told me that he'd be this year, so I said, he better. So,
Anything else?
yeah, what else we got, Josh?
Well, if you haven't noticed, Briar Hill Ventures, the recycling company that does the construction materials, their big hoop building is going up there on Briar Hill Road. You can see it from 72. It's pretty neat structure. So they're moving forward with their operation, bringing it to Hampshire. Now the costs have come down a little bit. I think that's it for business. Oh, well, Mike Gazzola is, he's controlling, there's a lot up on Arrowhead Drive up by the McDonald's and the Wendy's. Back in there behind the concrete mixing plant. It's kind of an odd shaped 7-acre parcel, and he's in control of that. And that's going to be another, he's not positive for sure, but another industrial type use that they're going to build a nice building and get some property tax revenue and do some logistics work up there. I think that's it.
How's the building on gas coming that they just
Building
built?
on gas road. Oh, yeah, Freight Union.
Yeah,
It's the big industrial building.
yeah.
Yeah, that is on hold by the owner.
Oh, by owner?
We don't exactly know why, but he has not made progress in a little while. I mean, the shell is up. I know they were waiting on ComEd and Nicor for a while. But as far as we know, maybe in the spring he'll pick it back up. But it's a developer that's got a lot of projects across the state and other states. So just waiting on him.
You said and when you were talking about that one, they withdraw there?
Yeah, they sent in a letter that's on our website now that they've withdrawn their zoning petition so that they can reevaluate. So there's a landing page both for the Prairie Ridge re-subdivision as well as the light zoning that has public documents on it that's on our website right now. If you go to the homepage and read all about it.
Wow.
That's shocking to me. That is a shocking, really, that's interesting.
Anything else anybody wants to share?
I do have one thing under new business, just to, in the spirit of transparency, to talk about it, because it's one of our priorities. I want to share a little bit of the discussion that happened at the last budget committee meeting, because it may have an impact on the facade program, depending on what the next discussion. It wasn't anything finalized or approved yet. So there is a need, there has been for years, as Chairman Krajewski will attest, for a new public works building. The current public works building off of Click Road is not big enough to house all of our plows and all of the equipment. So you have brand new multi-$100,000 snow plows that sit outside in the elements year round. That when it's below zero and we're gonna get snow, they run nonstop 24 hours a day just to stay warm so they don't freeze up when they need to go and start plowing. And so a couple of years ago, there was a potential to have one of the business owners in town donate land and then finance the building of a new public works facility. Think of them as like really, really large pole barns, basically. That we would move from Click over to there. For many reasons that other businesses faced with the cost of construction going way up, it just wasn't feasible. We are now at a point where we can't keep delaying that because we have equipment that is now, we're spending the money on new equipment rather than protecting the equipment we have, and that will continue to happen, which we cannot continue to afford. So there was a discussion on how do we raise revenue to, in the budget, to potentially look at financing a new building with the current business owner still donating land. There was mixed reaction, I think is a good way to say it, from the budget committee on the proposal on how to raise the revenue. And so there was discussions on are there other ways rather than raising revenue to find the money in the budget to pay for this type of financing. And so one of the discussions I brought up was that, you know, when you look at a budget from a governmental standpoint, there are nice to haves and there are must haves in providing services to the community. Paying for salt to salt the roads in the winter is a must have. Paying for police is a must have. The facade program does really good things for the business or for the community, but it is kind of a nice to have. There are other areas where we said, that's an example. I was the one that actually brought that up. And I said, look, I'm going to tell you that before we talk about raising fees to a community, are there areas that are nice to haves in our budget that we could reallocate money to pay for something like this, if it's that high of a priority? And so we just had a long discussion about it. I think the discussion is going to continue at the next budget meeting when we get back to the general fund, because that's where that money comes out of. But just as a heads up, that if the budget committee decides to go forward with the fee proposal to the village, then nothing would happen with the facade, because the facade program was earmarked in the budget at the 100K recommendation. If the budget committee says, no, we don't want to do the fee and we got to find other ways to cut from the budget or not do the program, there could be multiple programs like the facade that have that money reallocated to something else.
How much is it?
What was the proposed annual payment, like 165?
I mean, obviously we'd have to go out for bid to know what the actual costs are gonna be, but for the financing on a $1.5 million building, we're estimating somewhere around 125,000 debt service for 20 years. So, you know, it's gotta be a funding source that has been consistent for years, not something that's really dependent on, you know, the economy or home building or anything like
Right, it
that.
can't be like impact fees where we get that for new construction, but you don't know if you're gonna get that new construction for 20 years, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna offer some, so now I don't know. Yeah, it's just a bad idea. And this is why I'm gonna say it's a bad idea. So not only did we create the facade program, we created a funding mechanism for this facade program, which is the places for eating tax, right? The places for eating tax, so logistically, philosophically, and, you know, logically, is an expense that is borne largely by the restaurant owners here in town. right? In a way. Now, theoretically, you could say ultimately the consumer pays that tax, but you can think about, you can sort of take it any way you want. The jump start to downtown, without question, has everything to do with that facade program. And if we go back to the old ways, which is where we were before, I went to the board and fought for the facade program because it was non-existent at the time. We had lack of investment in the downtown community because the buildings themselves had deteriorated to the point where the ROI calculation required for a new business owner to come in and make an investment was basically in many ways a non-starter. I just feel like we go back to the old sort of attrition, sort of austerian style economics process, because the minute you take that facade program away, it's never coming back.
Right.
And that's how programs
Well,
work.
especially for 20
And
years.
you got 20 years to
And
fund.
I'm not saying,
and I'm not
to
saying,
use the facade,
No, no.
I gave that as an example.
No, and that's all, I'm just arguing for the facade program. What I'm just saying is, what that has done for this community, I think, it's not to say that the need for building a public works building is not something that is essential and requirement based upon the accelerated wear that comes from those trucks, which will add a cost that you'll have to pay for later, what you're saying. But when we start to take away some of the, our investment on our side towards the, development of the commercial activity in this town, I really think that, I just think it's a really bad idea. And so I would like for you, and unless anybody else thinks differently, to take the message from the BDC board as violently and strongly as you can, not violently, physically violent, but like, we think that is not a great idea unless someone has a different opinion on that. I just think it's done so much for this town that it echoes beyond these borders. I mean, I was in line with someone at Caputo's in South Elgin, and she told me she was from Genoa. I'm like, oh, I'm from Hampshire. She's like, she goes, what you guys are doing in that downtown is amazing. It's incredible. I just think there's more to it than just moving dollars around on a spreadsheet. And I just feel like, as one of my last things to say in this meeting, in this board, I would be very disappointed in seeing, maybe like saying, hey, wheels are really great, but we've gotten all we want out of wheels, so let's go back to like square blocks, right? I mean, we invented something that works. Why would we go backwards? That's my opinion. Obviously, I feel very passionate about it.
Aren't they doing something with the dealership in town?
And also, we did fund it. We created, that was Christine Klein's concept, where we created the place for eating tax to fundamentally fund the facade program into perpetuity. I know fundamentally it needs to be chosen by the board every year, but it's not, it's not coming, it was funded before, so it's not an unfunded mandate, so to speak. So, I'm sorry, what was you saying?
The dealership in town, are
Yeah.
they moving?
I don't know what the story is on that these days. I'm not privy to those things. That's more of a Josh and Jay thing.
I honestly couldn't tell you at this point.
I mean, because that's a big space, and they have their whole, couldn't
Maybe
they
I won't.
use that?
I don't mean that I know. I don't mean that I know, and it's not public information. I mean, I don't know what they're thinking over there at this point, because there's been situations with renewing the lease for a while and coming up with temporary solutions. The whole idea was that like 3 years ago, Stellantis, the corporate owner of Chrysler, was forcing them out of their facility into another one. And it seems like that pressure's not there anymore, is what I'm understanding. So now it's just.
What you're bringing up though, it's not the right type of facility to house those, because those, I mean, we're talking really large vehicles.
Oh, really?
Oh, is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, something to help.
No, that's
Like,
that's a good idea.
think
I
the
like the
roof clearance
clearance.
is big enough for
Yeah.
that too.
Well, I mean, if you,
If you ever walk in the shop back there and how they navigate cars in and out of their service space, you'll quickly understand that.
oh, no, I get that, it would have to definitely be reconstructed, but.
Yeah, it's not big enough in footprint, and I would also argue that that's not a good space for a public works garage right on the corner of. State
Yeah.
Street.
You don't-
It's like ideal retail space.
Yeah.
So really quick, I just want to remind everyone that on April 20th, midway down on the list, we're advocating that facade program is
Exactly.
vital to the, right? So I hear the example and I hear the passion,
That's all I got.
but there will also be a venue, even though it's going to be post budget meeting. To just.
No, I'm not
reiterate
saying
the
that's,
point,
that was an example that was given of and I don't disagree with you. There's mechanisms to fund it. It has done a ton to the community.
Yeah.
I would still argue that when you compare that versus public works, it's a nice to have in the community versus like infrastructure, roads, absolutely a must. Paying to patch up the front of a building because they have, now I'm oversimplifying, because we, as a village, failed
Correct.
to
Enforce code.
enforce code, which is also on that list. We kind of put ourselves into the position for you to have to create that program to get it back up there so that businesses could afford to move down Market Belt.
I don't disagree.
And so I'm not saying it's not important. Please don't take it that way.
No, I'm not saying that, but it seems like the old sort of, don't take this the wrong way, it is that Austrian style of cut. You have to look at, this is the same argument I made on the board. I don't think you were on the board at that time. This was before you went to supper. It was the same argument because we were in the same position. Well, my argument at the time was, what we tried for 10 years was to narrow, pull in. What the general economic theory behind that is that creates oftentimes a downward spiral. Now, do I think there's enough inertia that's going on through development to where we're not sort of in that same hole? But don't underestimate what other people see as they look out into our community as to what we're doing, such that emboldens them to make investments into a community because they believe that we're serious. Now, I think with Jay and Josh on board, that's a huge piece of it, but people want to invest where people are willing to invest in themselves. And I just feel like while it's a small piece of a $11 million budget, right? The $100,000 is, I think that's last I saw, it's probably 13 or something now. I think the total budget, when you consider water and all that other stuff, it is a symbolic message to the rest of the world that Hampshire is serious and that we are investing in ourselves, that this is a place where it's wise to invest. That was the argument I made back then. And whether it was the timing, right, so far out from the 08-09 collapse or, the metropolis slowly was creeping towards whatever the timing is. But since we started investing ourselves, in my view, things have radically changed around here in a way that brings up the entire community. I would find somewhere else to go. That would be my.
And if we could, I think that was the call to action from the discussion. That was an example.
No, I.
The call to action
It's an
was,
easy one.
I am sure there are other areas that are nice to have. Now, there is also other discussions of multiple different ways to find ways to generate revenue to pay for that. I think
We
there
are
is still a major discussion, not the facade program. Pay for
Oh, yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, I just.
And so I think
feel like
that's part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, staff had a discussion this morning, at the meeting, and Jay kind of challenged all the department heads to say, look, if the board says no to a revenue increase, we have to find a way to do this, so figure out what it's gonna be in your department. And it's not, it's hard all around, so it's just a choice the board's gonna have to make, and
Right, and so I have no idea where I'm not on the budget committee. I can be there to give comments and feedback and ask questions because we do committee of the whole, or not committee of the whole, we do it as a working session. But I'm not a voting member on the budget committee. I just wanted to relate to you the conversation I have. It will continue as part of the general fund conversation in the next budget committee meeting. I have no idea where it's gonna go, because it was a pretty open discussion. There were people that were adamant that it's a priority and that it should be no problem to raise the revenue with the suggested proposal. And there were a couple that were not sure that raising a revenue is the right path to go.
It's raising within taxes.
No, so the proposal, because it's public, so the proposal was, how we have a water and sewer $20 fee on your bill?
Yeah.
It's to add another one of those for capital improvements on your water bill so that every household, so instead of a village sticker fee, where a lot of villages will do a sticker fee to go to public works, it's to add another capital improvement fee rather than going to a referendum.
Is there an estimate?
It was $60 a year per house,
$10 per billing cycle.
$10 per billing cycle, $60 a year for every household, or everybody who gets billed for water and sewer.
And over time,
It would never go away.
it could decrease with housing development.
The proposal was it would never go away.
Aaron, how many, would be nice to have, do you have besides the?
We don't know. That was the ask to the.
Could you
to the
borrow,
village staff.
like, let's say there's 6 of them. I'm gonna take 10,000 from this, but that's it, and leave you with the rest, 10,000, just borrow from each
Well, and
instead of
there's
one.
other potentials too right now.
If you're
I know what village staff's feeling is gonna be on this, because this is something that I know Chairman Kajeki was on a board when it was brought up. That water and sewer fee that you have, the capital improvement fee that was on there,
Mhm.
the debt service that is intended to help pay after this fiscal year is done. But that fee continues on in perpetuity as the way it was passed,
Mhm.
and it has to in its current in the way that it's currently done, because it's designated for water and sewer, it can only go to water and sewer capital improvement projects. So you could say, when the debt service is gone, end that fee and just end the one fee and have that same amount now be a public work, so that people that get their bill have no financial difference. We're just reallocating the money to somewhere
Mhm.
else. I think the argument you're gonna get from the village staff is that we have a lot of water system that needs capital
Sure,
improvements.
no, I mean, it's absolutely, in capital additional.
And it may end
Are
up
not,
coming out
are not-
where the board and
Yeah.
the budget committee says, you know what? $10 a bill and $60 a year is not too much to ask residents, and that's what they're gonna recommend to the board. I don't know where it's gonna go. I just wanted to be transparent.
No, and I appreciate you
Saw
telling
the
me that.
program had come up in that conversation, and I was the one that said, is there nice to haves that aren't critical for village services to the community? That we could find ways to fund this as an alternative to raising a fee. I gave an example. I understand the passion.
You introduced the idea of cutting.
I did. I said I will start saying, well, and here's why I said it though, is, and I didn't say we should cut it. I said, I can see this as a nice to have. I don't see police as a nice to have. I don't see streets or water or sewer as nice to haves, right? I don't see those as nice to haves. I don't see building and code enforcement as a nice to have.
Do you see do you see SUVs for police vehicles as a nice to have or a have to have? That's a
I
significant
see
cost to
police vehicles as a have to have.
But the SUVs or the increased expenditures that it costs to put it in an SUV over, and that was when I lost that battle in the.
But I think those are the decisions that.
The
they
police,
have
it's
to
not
make.
just about providing police, it's the things that the police want as well, which, can vary. I mean, it's 50% of a general fund, right?
Yeah.
The police are better. I think it was 2.3 million last I saw.
Yeah, and so.
Somewhere in there. I mean, not saying anything against the police, but it's like, what are they, the balance of things. I think that, well, you know what?
That was just an example.
I understand that, but
And-
I
and
think
the task
sometimes
to
they get
staff
asked
was,
those things. that they-
Is there even enough nice to haves in a budget to even consider that path? Or is it a consideration of, we have to either raise revenue or we have to consider going to referendum?
Pays almost 1-to-1 the number that you need.
No, it was
125 to 100, I thought.
the other part of the fee. That was part of the proposal is that it provides revenue above and beyond what the facility itself costs, that then can also be used for things like street improvements and capital projects for streets and flooding and stuff that still needs to get done of that $39 million area that couldn't get done. So the discussion was, does the fee cover enough beyond to where the budget committee and then ultimately the board, a majority of the board say, this is needed in the village and it is the way it is. There could be a discussion of, this is absolutely needed, but we need to go to referendum and let the community
I
decide.
remind them that was like in the 6% of the income demographic in the state of Illinois, people in Hampshire. The $60 per household, I think people would willingly exchange. Now, you'll never get
And
a vote
I
on a
will tell you, there
referendum.
are
They'll never
people in
do
the
it.
budget
That's-
committee
they
that
don't do it.
absolutely said that people would have no problem at all, that $60 a year would be like a minimal impact. So there are multiple things being discussed. I just wanted you all to know that that had come up in discussion, and I'm the one that brought up the idea of, do we have nice to haves in excess to cover it? If we don't have enough to cover it at 100% and give what staff needs to maintain that, then it doesn't matter if you get 100K. This is an all or none. You can't just say we've got 100K and now we can fund most of it. So I don't know where it'll end up, to be totally honest with you. Do you want to give your feeling from it? I think it was a pretty mixed,
No, I
like,
think that
open
was
discussion.
a good representation, and it was a I mean, I think that committee meeting was 3 hours long and there was an hour on that topic, so that was just in the general fund.
Not on the
Who's-
facade, not on the facade part.
Who's representing our voice there? Who's representing BDC's voice?
I
In the
represent-
sense of the work that we have put in over the course of 6 years in developing all this inertia and energy, I'd like someone to voice our opinion.
Yeah, and that would be my
In debate and lobby on our part, I mean, that's what government's about, right?
That would be my role.
Okay, I'm asking you, please, as our group, to lobby for the importance of this. Is that at least in terms of, and I don't mean to speak for the group, and I know I've gotten paid loud, but it's something I care pretty deeply about. This was a long fought win. This was not easy to get through. I mean, it was very difficult to get it through the board, in my view. It was anti-thinking. I mean, Magnuson, and when I first proposed the idea, thought it was nuts.
Now,
Not nuts, but I just.
I mean, I get all
we
that,
worked
but I also want to point out that in these BDC meetings, we've talked about the fact that at some point that
At some
facade
point.
program should be able to go away because we have funded to a point.
Right, but we are not there yet. We are not there yet. We go all the way down to the chicken dip is included, right? I mean.
No, I think it's just the
No.
State Street area.
No, I think
Go,
it's the
go read the, go read the.
Is it to the
section.
chicken?
Yeah, definitely
Okay.
includes it, because we wrote it that way intentionally, because we
Gotcha.
thought at some point in the future, like, it would be nice, to be in a position where chicken dip wanted to do something really significant, because that's an icon in this town.
Right.
See, these are the things that penny pinchers, in my opinion, not saying your opinion, but people who are looking at from that miss, right? That cultures are not built on cheap taxes. They're just not. Cultures are built on investments that we make as a collective into the things that we value, right? When I first came to the board, that downtown was a miserable mess. We had a tree growing out of that building
Right,
down there, right? It was absurd.
but that wasn't because of investment.
It was because of lack of investment.
It was because of lack of action.
Well, it was lack of action and lack of investment.
Like when you don't hold people accountable to maintain their buildings, of course they're going to do so.
No, but at the same time, that situation that existed in the lack of enforcement had existed for a better part of a decade.
Right.
So at '09, the way that we started to try to solve everything was to cut, right? So when I came here, I thought the first thing, my first action, are we still on TV?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. This will be fun, theater for people. But when I first came, like, I thought, oh, I'm a businessman, right? I've been successful. I'm gonna look at this budget and I'm gonna figure this out, right? It's the naive thing about politicians. I think, and you look at this budget, it is everything. And Lori Lori and Jeff did the best that they could possibly do. But what they weren't doing was thinking out of the box and finding ways to reinvest in ourselves. And I feel like if we return to that and we buy, and the inertia that comes from the development, the dollars that developers see now as houses are being built, I don't think we ever return to that phase, but we risk becoming something less than what we're capable of being. When we make intentional investments into, and I do agree with you, and that was my argument originally, was at the point we're building this program that's so that at some point it ends. Because if we do our work, there's only so many buildings, blah, 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 that it should end. But if we should end it when we believe the work has been done. We shouldn't end it because we're trying to save, the citizens of Hampshire, $10 on the water bill. Only because you could make an argument about any tax under that logical precept, right? Right, unless you go to just the have-to-haves. And I know that there's a certain political philosophy that believes in that, the government should only be providing have-to-haves. I certainly don't agree with that because I feel like, money is sort of an inertial thing. Once you make investments, more investments come in, it builds. It's much about psychology as it is about economy. So I guess I've said a lot now, but I really want someone to advocate for that group, and I may just call them all the pledge committee. I think that's what them ways to call them, talk to them, or is that good? I can call them, right? Voice my opinion, or do I have to do it in a public setting?
They're public meetings.
Yeah, I mean, they're public meetings. You can show up and speak on public comments. I mean, they're public, they're your trustees. I would suggest you consider reaching out to Mike first, just because.
Yeah, no, I'll talk to Mike. Yeah, no, that'd be brilliant. I'll talk to Mike too. I would hate for it to see us do that. I think that would, because if it goes away, it ain't never coming back. That's just how programs work. And I know sometimes people worry about once you put programs in, they never go away. And
I also want to reiterate, there was not a proposal to take it away. The proposal in the budget is for $100K for the facade work. I wanted you to know there was a part of it.
No, and I appreciate that. I'm not taking this out on you.
Totally,
It's not
totally
personal.
understand.
This is me about an idea.
And my
that-
role as the trustee on this board is to represent the flavor of this board. And if the flavor of this board is absolutely above all else, that needs to stay into the budget.
I want you to.
Then
show
that's
up in
my
your
job
shades
to
of
do
wear a outfit. And you just-
Yeah, I don't think I'll do that,
You come up with the power of the BDC.
but it is my role to step outside of whatever my opinion as a trustee may be to represent this BDC, and I have no problem doing it.
Yeah, no, and
But I also want to invite anybody
I
to
completely
all of these
agree with
meetings,
Ryan.
just like this.
Exactly.
These meetings are all open to the
Yeah,
public, so
Right.
we even have on our agenda, number 2, public comments.
Public
So
comments.
same thing with budget committee.
All right, no, that's good. Yeah, and I appreciate you hearing me out. I didn't expect that. I was not prepared mentally or emotionally. I wasn't, so, that's why that was the first thing I asked you.
And that's
why
why-
I go, I didn't say I go, how's the facade budget look like? And you say it's still in there.
It is. That is the current proposal as presented to the budget committee.
Megan, how do you feel about, and you can disagree with me if you want, I'm a really nice guy. I just get excited about things, because I do, if it is a unanimous opinion, I do want him to bring that back to the budget committee as, if it's not, then state your opinion.
No, I definitely agree. Obviously, I wasn't here in, starting it. I don't know everything that you went through, but I know even in our initial discussions of like coming onto this board, I believe wholeheartedly in focusing on downtown and improving it, and that's where part of the town is going to be. And the town around us, I mean, like we think of, they have like good, nice looking and popular and robust downtowns. Like I'm like Rose, I mean personally, like Sycamore, Geneva, St. Charles, like they have really good downtowns. So I agree.
Mr. Salata. Oh, I thought you had.
I totally,
Yeah, sorry. Lynn.
when I first moved here, I moved here in 2015. Before that, I had come here for business with doctors and stuff like that. And I remember going, what is this? Like it, I'm like, am I in a twilight zone? There's like a gas station that doesn't pump gas. There's there's tumbleweeds in the road. I mean, I just was like, it was creepy until the facade program came through, and now it's, there's people at the Hampshire Social all the time. There's people at it's just booming now compared to, I mean, it was terrible.
I remember used to driving, we would come from my father's house in Wisconsin on Sunday night,
Mhm.
and we'd be like, yeah, we don't want to cook. My wife and I say, driving back, we'd always forget. You would drive at like 7:00 downtown Hampshire, and it was a ghost town.
Oh, yeah.
Corkshire was closed. You'd have to go to the Red Ox, right? Because that was the only option that we had. And, there is people have an emotional attachment to their town. And it's, the same way you have an emotional attachment to your house. You want it to be nice, you want it to look nice. And I think that, again, I just want to reiterate that at the end is, I think at some point it should end, but it should end when we're done. It shouldn't end at the same.
I have to say, I love that gas station. I just never been here,
No, yeah.
and I was like,
Right.
what's
We all
going on?
And it looks much better than it did.
I was like Twilight Zone, that's all I can say. I mean,
So-
it's not anymore.
So I manage our Google page for the Village Hall. And one of the things I did probably 4 years ago, I took a picture of Main Street and I went back because recently I changed it. And there was not one car in parking spots driving through town, and it was like desolate. And when I changed the image, I was just shocked at how you drive through now and it's just like flourishing, right? I'm a huge advocate for the program. I think it could even be expanded at some point, because there probably are some businesses even across the tracks that could benefit from some of that investment. That being said, I do deal with budgets on an ongoing basis in my professional life. And to Liz's point earlier, as much as I would advocate, I think this program needs to be there, but also I personally would be willing to, if there were several programs that were able to find 10 to 20,000 apiece. to all contribute towards something without abolishing, taking it all and the whole program goes away. I think but in my mind, because I have to do
Like as a
that
compromise.
as a compromise. As an ongoing, because I have to do that professionally, where it's more of like, the program doesn't go away, we still can achieve great things with that money. But it's also then it allows the program to live on.
And I think we did that for a couple
We
of years.
said we
right?
did
It's
do
down
that
to
when we had a tight
75K or
budget,
something.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I just think that the alternative is, if a fee isn't, I mean, taking away the, again, I'm obviously going to, talking about a child, but taking away the facade program is not going to fund the capital fund long-term. It's just not, right? When you look at $37 million, it continues to grow. And that was sort of when you guys first put that together, I was still on board. It was a huge number. You're like, wow, that ain't never happening, right? You just can't do it. It's very difficult, right? I think the argument needs to be made firmly that going out into the future, the establishment of a capital, because I don't even think that fee is uncommon amongst other towns, is it, Josh?
It's definitely not on the water and sewer side, and then, I mean, where we got the idea for the roadside was from other towns, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common fee. I think that to me would be more than, sticking, I'm okay with the compromise. It's too early to compromise. No, I get what you're saying, but I would say, I think that we need to create the capital.
The board, the committee, not board, the committee is unified that I need to defend adamantly for the facade program to be included in the budget, that it is a necessity for our village and for the continued growth of our village in a positive manner. I will do that, absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that.
And you'll hold me accountable to do that.
Yeah.
I won't say anything.
I'll be a member of the public.
Yeah, sure.
I will be there.
You'll be staring at me. You got something to say?
Hey, let's go. It's like my wife when I'm negotiating the car deal. Just like, make sure you get that thing. I want that moonroof.
I will absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you putting up with, my antics a little bit. But it does mean a lot to us. We feel it's been part and parcel of the mission that we've had for a very long time. And it's, while it was hard to get up and going, but now that you see, I think we're on 15 projects now or something like that. Some crazy. I mean, the transformation of this area, like we were just down here for, what was that? Oh, it was the ice, the ice capade. Oh, that was, yeah. Oh, and you're just down there and you're just talking to people and just the look on their faces.
Yeah.
Just the excitement of being, just downtown and spending time together. And, I was just at Christine Klein's vintage hammer, yesterday picking up, or Monday picking out a gift for my mom. And, I'm like, hey, what do you think of that Hampshire social? It's pretty sweet. She goes, I go there every day.
Same.
Right. And oh yeah, well, that's awesome. I mean, it's a Christmas spirit, right? I mean, it's as crazy as it
Yeah.
sounds. That is a piece that
Well,
I think gets missed a lot.
I think we talked about maybe in the last meeting, there were already potentially 3 projects that may be tapped for next year. Already people saying that they're interested in applying for the program.
I mean, did you ever think the cave would look not like the cave? I mean, seriously, and no offense, but I mean, it was that way for a long time, and they've done a fantastic job with Gina and Dave, and I think they made great investments. It's been smart and it's
Gardenberry,
Gardenberry,
Mhm.
we've never.
which needs
thought.
to finish. They're not done yet.
Spring.
So, and the food is great in there.
It is,
Have you eaten it?
yes.
Holy cow! And I'm a foodie. Man, I was very impressed with the food. I've been there 3 times. Every time the meeting's been good. So.
Well, I appreciate everybody's
Thank you.
feedback. I will make sure to represent the BDC in the budget committee and the passion that we have. towards keeping. Maybe not to the level.
Hey, listen,
Chairman Kentucky
that's
could do, but I will at least express that there is a lot of passion behind this.
And then you just point to me and I'll be like, yeah. All right, I would like to, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So,
Second.
any questions or comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
I.
Aye. All those opposed, crazy. Motion has it.